Good morning, club members. We digest world-class journalism and talk it through in plain English. Here are 5 stories worth your time. Russia has welded heavy metal cages onto its attack submarines in the Black Sea. Recent satellite images show metal mesh covers built around 3 of their 4 remaining vessels. Ukrainian forces have used small flying drones to strike high-value naval targets in harbour. When a submarine rests in port, most of its massive steel hull stays underwater. However, the tall metal tower at the top remains above the surface line. That conning tower contains the periscopes, steering controls, and crew entry hatches. If a flying kamikaze drone hits that tower, the entire submarine becomes unusable. To head off this threat, Russian crews built simple metal frameworks over the towers. Military observers call these improvised metal covers cope cages. The cage creates a physical barrier between the diving drone and the warship. When the drone strikes, its warhead detonates against the mesh armor several feet away. That extra distance reduces the blast force before it reaches the main steel hull. It is a cheap and low-tech solution to a very dangerous threat. One remaining submarine in the port has not received any metal armor at all. Naval analysts suggest Russian officers view that specific vessel as a lower priority. Satellite pictures show 3 armored submarines sitting partially submerged inside their harbor basin. Their hulls stay hidden below water, but their metal roofs remain visible to flying drones. Armoured land vehicles first started using these metal screens over 4 years ago. Now, the Russian Navy is forced to use the exact same crude defence at sea. In fact, these improvised screens are spreading far beyond Eastern Europe to other regions. Some governments in the Middle East now place massive metal cages over fuel tanks. That shows how small, inexpensive flying weapons have changed military defence everywhere. Ukraine has already inflicted heavy losses on Russia's Black Sea fleet since the war began. Several major warships have been damaged or sunk by innovative Ukrainian attacks. Yet these top metal cages only protect against small drones diving from above. They offer no safety against the uncrewed sea drones attacking across the water. Surface sea drones carry far heavier explosive warheads than small flying craft. Installing heavy metal armor all around a submarine hull would make underwater diving impossible. So Russian commanders face a clear and difficult choice in port today. They can shield their towers from airstrikes, but their fleet remains vulnerable from below. Moving on to our second topic, we turn from military defense to the world of beauty. South Korea has become the second largest exporter of cosmetics in the world. The country recently passed the United States to claim that position. You might expect famous global brands to drive such impressive growth. Instead, the real power comes from thousands of small brands without any factories. These small companies handle design and marketing, but they outsource all manufacturing. They rely on specialized contract manufacturers to create, test, and package everything. This system mirrors the famous semiconductor setup in Taiwan. In the chip industry, factory specialist TSMC builds chips for tech giants like Apple. In South Korea, 2 dominant manufacturing firms do the exact same thing for cosmetics. The pioneer of this industry, Kolma Korea, started back in 1990. It owns 0 consumer brands and sells nothing directly to shoppers. Its leadership even says their rule is never to compete with their clients. Instead, the company focuses completely on research, development, and factory production. An entrepreneur can walk in with a simple idea for a face cream. The manufacturer tests the formula, handles safety permits, and makes the final bottles. They even offer a catalogue of 150 existing formulas ready for selection. This setup reduces product creation time from 1 year down to 3 months. Buying raw ingredients in massive quantities keeps overall production costs very low. A legal change in 2011 pushed this business model even further. South Korea allowed companies without factories to sell cosmetics legally. By 2025, the country had over 28,000 factory-free cosmetics businesses. That's more than 4 times the number registered 10 years ago. Why has this flexible manufacturing model proven so successful? It allows new brands to launch products without spending millions on factories. Most skincare items disappear quickly, but extreme speed lets companies test many ideas. When a product succeeds, continuous updates help it stay a long-term bestseller. Traditional companies in Japan still try to manage development and factories themselves. That older approach is much slower and costs far more money. As a result, traditional Japanese giants are losing market share to fast South Korean rivals. South Korean factories produced over $12 billion in beauty products last year. The big question now is whether rival nations can copy this factory model successfully. After looking at beauty supply chains, our third topic brings us to military technology in the US. When a government buys military equipment, it inspects every piece of metal very carefully. However, modern defense systems rely just as much on complex computer code. A recent executive order from President Trump expands supply chain rules to include software. Defense contractors must now trace all digital components back to their origin. The Pentagon calls this detailed record an indentured bill of materials, or an IBOM. Think of it as a complete ingredient label for defense software. An indentured list breaks a finished product down into nested layers of subcomponents. That means contractors must identify every piece of code and where it was written. For a long time, official rules focused mainly on physical items like rare magnets. Recent policy news focused heavily on metals like tungsten and tantalum. Yet, digital vulnerabilities can cause just as much damage to national defense. Now, software code is formally treated as part of the critical military supply chain. Officials want to make sure software comes only from trusted sources at all levels. They hope to protect military systems against potential sabotage and unexpected disruption. The order requires companies to look for financial risks and foreign control. Contractors cannot simply account for the code they wrote inside their own office. They must also inspect third-party tools built into their finished products. If an external coder works under foreign influence, that risk must be reported. Many defense firms already track their basic software components to some degree. However, tracing nested code down to raw origin is far more complicated. Computer programs often use open libraries created by engineers all around the world. Finding out who originally wrote every small piece of code takes considerable effort. Small technology vendors might struggle to audit every line of external software. Larger contractors will need new tracking tools to verify their digital suppliers. Pentagon officials plan to evaluate contractor submissions very carefully for completeness. Companies selling to the military are being asked 4 key questions today. They must show their current mapping abilities and assess their external suppliers. Vendors must also confirm if their digital supply chains have untrusted foreign ties. Providing these clear answers will soon become a strict condition of sale. Firms that cannot trace their code risk losing lucrative government defense contracts. In the end, code transparency is becoming just as strict as physical supply safety. We shall see how quickly tech contractors can adapt to these demanding new standards. For our 4th topic, we move from defense software to the skies over Ukraine. Ukraine is preparing to fly Swedish Gripen fighter jets against Russian Su-35 aircraft. This setup brings 2 completely different design philosophies into direct combat. Russia built the Su-35 as a massive heavy fighter jet. It features twin engines, extreme flight speed, and a very large weapons payload. It can patrol long distances and carry heavy missiles into intense battle zones. On paper, the Russian plane clearly leads in raw power and physical performance. Sweden took an entirely different approach when creating the Gripen. They needed a small, affordable jet for their Cold War defense strategy. Swedish engineers designed the Gripen to operate away from traditional military airfields. Small ground crews can land, refuel, and rearm the plane on public highways. That allows air forces to keep flying even if main bases are destroyed. The upcoming match is not just about plane size or raw speed. It is really a test of mass force against smart digital systems. The Gripen relies heavily on advanced electronic warfare capabilities. Its jamming equipment can hide the aircraft from hostile surface-to-air missiles. Even more importantly, Gripen jets excel at sharing secure data with each other. One aircraft can track a target silently without revealing its own position. It passes that location data to a second jet, which fires the missile. Russia's Su-35 also carries powerful jammers and long-range sensors. However, Russian air tactics focus more on individual power than connected networks. Russia trusts heavy firepower and high maneuverability to dominate the ski. Sweden trusts stealthy teamwork, smart sensors, and fast software updates. That contrast makes this future face-off extremely important for military experts worldwide. It will show whether heavy physical force still rules modern dogfights. Or it may prove that network integration matters more than raw speed. The skies over Ukraine will soon provide a real test of both ideas. For our final story today, we turn from fighter jets to something much closer to home. A growing wellness trend has people buying unregulated chemicals online to inject at home. These products promise everything from weight loss and muscle growth to sharper thinking and longevity. They are known as peptides, which are short chains of amino acids. Health authorities do not regulate these substances, so they skip standard safety checks. Sellers use a legal loophole by labeling the items for research purposes only. Under federal rules, sellers cannot offer any instructions on how to use them safely. As a result, buyers must buy their own syringes and figure out the math alone. A new study set out to discover how often buyers make dangerous mistakes. Researchers gave powdered weight loss medication to 20 adults of different ages. The participants included 10 young adults and 10 people in their 60s. They were asked to mix the powder, fill a syringe, and inject a plastic mannequin. Everyone could search the internet and consult artificial intelligence tools for guidance. Even with the entire internet available, average scores were surprisingly low. Participants in both age groups correctly finished fewer than half of the required steps. Many people failed to sterilize their skin or clean the vials before sticking the needle. Some users mixed their powder with cloudy or expired mixing liquid. Others left large air bubbles in their syringes, which ruins dosing accuracy. Several people injected fluid into muscle tissue instead of belly fat. That simple mistake alters how quickly the drug enters the bloodstream. When the test ended, half the group failed to lock the needle safety guards. Beyond injection mistakes, the raw products themselves carry severe risks of contamination. Uncertified vials may contain bacteria, heavy metals, or the wrong drug strength. In July 2026, one supplier was jailed for 70 months for selling tainted goods. The core problem is that reading online forums creates a dangerous sense of confidence. Doing your own medical care sounds modern until a small mixing error harms your health. That brings us to the end of today's stories. Thank you for sharing your breakfast with me, and I will see you tomorrow morning.